Welcome to BAM Fight Club podcast. This is episode number 2. We are previewing the upcoming pay-per-view UFC 270 Ngannou vs. Gane, which will be airing on January 22nd. Early prelims starting at 3 p.m., pay-per-view starting at 7. Early prelims and the prelims will be on ESPN+. I'm Colby Callahan, and this is Fernando Juarez. First fight on the card is Kay Hansen vs. Jazzu. I can't even say it. Fern, help me out here.
Jazzu Vicious.
All right.
Vicious.
What he said. And Kay Hansen's coming in as a favorite at negative 240. Jasmine's coming in at a plus 200. And Fern, how did you break this fight down?
I can see why Hansen is the favorite in this fight. She hasn't fought in a while. Last fought in November 2020. She openly disagreed with the outcome of that fight. She lost by decision. From what I saw, she has great submissions. A lot of her victories are from armbar or guillotine. Great takedowns. Last fight, she was outlanded in total strikes, but she had a great takedown and almost submission in round 2. Ducked under a heavy overhand right, shot in, took the back, and transitioned to the rear naked from the back position, and then transitioned into an armbar. So she puts together her attacks very well, especially her ground attacks. Her last fight, she did have a greater takedown percentage, greater significant strikes, and total strike percentage, but her opponent landed more strikes. From what I see, she just has great wrestling and great ground, and put it together very well. Like I mentioned, went from takedown to taking the back, went rear naked choke, and then as her opponent turned to get out of the rear naked, she went to the armbar, and it was so smooth, within seconds. Jazzu Vicious, or Vicious, whatever warrior ass name that is Dana White Contender Series fighter. 6-1 in her is her record. Her last 3 fights were decisions, 2 wins, 1 loss. She is known as a striker, but her last fight, she was going for takedowns. And I think she faced somebody who had just as good a striking, if not better. She was actually forced to strike walking backwards a lot of the fight. To the point where people, the commentators and everyone thought that she lost because she was walking backwards. But I saw it as her obviously avoiding pressure, but she was landing more combinations. She was able to strike walking back, was her strength in her last fight, because the other fighter just didn't string together multiple punches like that. But I think with another fighter, it's going to get her in trouble. You don't ever want to fight on the back foot as much as she did. She started strong, clearly round one in that fight, but faded into the later rounds where, again, it looked like she was on the losing end. So for this fight, my pick is going to be Hansen. Even though she has the layoff, her forward pressure and Jazzu Vicious, likelihood to walk backwards is going to lead to her taken down. You can't walk backwards with a wrestler. You're going to get caught off balance. And Jazzu Vicious threw tons of head kicks and stuff like that. Stuff that I think is going to leave her open for Hansen this fight. Okay,
and it looks like is Hansen going up a weight class for this fight? It looks like she was shown on ESPN as a 115-pounder. Jasmine is a 125-pounder. So it looks like Jasmine's got 5 inches on height, 5 inches on reach, and might be a heavier fighter. So that might be interesting in terms of giving Jasmine maybe a little bit of size advantage. But like you said, if Jasmine's going to be going backwards, I think a lot of that size advantage would be kind of taken away.
Yeah, and she throws a lot of high kicks, and against her already being taller, I could see that's happened in a couple fights I've seen when they're taller and they throw head kicks, and the other person just ducks under them and shoots. And multiple inch height and reach advantages. If she can keep her pressure going forward, yeah, she'll be able to keep her back there. If she's walking backward, to me, that's just going to negate any reach advantage she has.
Yeah, and I like Kay in this fight as well. Jasmine coming off the Contender Series, like you'd mentioned, not able to finish her opponent there, and also not able to finish her last two opponents. Well, she lost 3 fights ago. Her last TKO was 4 fights ago in CFFC, 81 in Cage Fury, which is interesting. But yeah, I think Kay's gonna be looking good in this fight. Next up on the fight card is Matt Fravalla versus Gennaro Valdez. And Fravalla is coming in as a -190 favorite. Valdez coming in at a +160 favorite. This is going to be a fun fight. I watched a couple of both of these guys' last fights. And I'll go ahead and start with Fravalla. His last fight was really easy to watch because it was 7 seconds. He got KO'd literally with the first 2 punches that were thrown. I was very surprised.
He got steamrolled, huh? Per his nickname, steamrolled.
I was not expecting it, and it was really interesting. So it was a nice, clean 1-2 that took him down. But the thing that surprised me is where those punches landed that resulted in a knockdown, which was like right in the nose area, upper lip area. I feel like very rarely do you see like a knockdown or a knockout from getting punched in that area. You know, usually it's like an angle on the chin, the temple, right behind the ear. That's where you're going to see the knockdowns and put someone's lights out.
Yeah, getting clipped.
Yeah, so I don't know what that means if you know, Fravalla's chin isn't in question, or if it was just one of those things where it was really more of a balance issue just because he got hit with so much force, and it was more of just getting knocked down from losing his footing. But I felt like that really did not bode well coming off of a fight like that. I imagine psychologically that's got to be really bad because Fravalla also, he's not you know, a new fighter. He's had several fights in the UFC, at least 5 that I've seen here. His last fight was in June of last year when he got that KO loss in the first round in 7 seconds. He was coming off a loss before that in January of last year, where he went to a decision. But so, no matter how I break down, you know, what kind of technical fighter he is, I feel like the biggest battle for him has got to be psychological at this point, coming off of 2 losses. In the fights where he did actually fight, though, he did have a pretty fun style. It was kind of in your face. He didn't seem like he was afraid to back down. I see him mix it up with strikes and wrestling and scrambles and things like that. So I'm excited that he's going to be in the fight. I really hope that it does not end quickly and that his chin holds up, because who he's going against is Valdez. And when I watched Valdez's fight, his last fight, this guy is a mad lad. He is coming off Dana White Contender Series, where he literally threw everything he had at the guy in the first round. By the end of the first round, Valdez was so tired he could barely throw a punch. You know, some of that might be up to nerves. It just wasn't you know, maybe not the smartest strategy for, you know, trying to plan a 3-round fight. But I love that he just came out swinging. He was in the guy's face the entire time. He had an insane, unsustainable pace, insane aggression, incredibly inefficient wrestling. This is the thing I will say from a technical standpoint with Valdez is one of the first things he did was shoot for a single leg on the guy. And instead of dumping with the single leg, which is what you would typically do, it's, you know, pretty efficient. You drive your shoulder into the guy's thigh, you pull up on the calf, you make a lever, and you pull the guy to the ground. He did the exact opposite. He tried to lift the guy, which is the worst thing. I think there's no move that I can think of in wrestling that is more tiring than getting a guy on a single leg and then trying to lift him up, and that's exactly what he did. So I think nerves probably played a little bit of a factor for sure, because he's trying to impress Dana White. Was definitely going for a finish, you could tell. But that's also what made it exciting, and I think why Dana White was on his feet. He ended up finishing the guy in the second round. And ended up getting the contract, obviously, because he's going into the UFC. But if he gets his conditioning under control and, you know, maybe just pulls back a little bit so that he can have something left in, you know, rounds 2 or 3 when he you know, goes up in competition getting into the UFC, I think this is going to be a guy kind of reminds me a little bit of like Diego Sanchez, where Diego Sanchez wasn't the most technical fighter. He's just more of a brawler. This guy seems like more
Just
of a
super
brawler.
tough, yeah.
Yeah, he's ready to throw down, won't back down. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. And another interesting thing I noticed was Moreno was in his corner on the Dana White Contender Series. So I'm not sure if he's been training with Moreno, but I thought that was interesting also. So I think Fravalla's got potentially a suspect chin, but better technique and control. And just because he's a veteran, I think he will come out with a better strategy than Valdez. I think Fravalla is going to pull this off, and that is how the odd makers are also seeing it. Silvana Gomez Juarez versus Vanessa Demopolis. And Silvana's coming in.
All these fancy names today.
I know, they're hard to pronounce. Silvana's coming in at a plus 120, Vanessa coming in at a negative 140, so pretty close in terms of the odds. How'd you break down this fight, Fern?
Watching a couple of their last fights, watch Gomez Juarez. She has a good record, 10-3, 6 KOs, TKOs. So you see her style. Her last fight, she lost by submission by an armbar. Her style, she's super aggressive. I went back and saw one of her fights where she beat an unbeaten opponent in Brazil, and it was crazy because her face was swollen, like kind of Giga in this last fight, and just her being aggressive, she has a great overhand right, like super relies on it consistently. That one fight I was watching in Brazil, she beat some fighter like by the name of like Daimano or something like that. She got beat up the whole fight and was able to end up beating her by submission because just her overhand right kept her in the fight. Like it's crazy. You know, she's going to be, to me, one of those fighters that they say like all they need is one shot because that's all she needed to drop this other fighter and gets the submission win. The aggressive attack though, like, you know, against somebody like Demopolis, has fought in other organizations, Dana White Contender Series, LFA, I believe it's Legacy Fighting Association. She's a champion, fought there as recently as a year ago. Her last fight in the UFC, she stepped in on short notice for her teammate. So you would think like they have similar fighting styles, similar training styles. She showed great takedowns. It seems like she was very aggressive on that, very set on getting the takedown. What had helped her set up, though, was great knees to the body. As soon as she got shot in for a takedown, it got, her opponent got the underhooks, pulled her up. She went right away to the knees to the body. One thing about Demopolis, she's a champion, but for being a champion, she has no head movement, like minimal head movement. So that combined with her forward pressure is going to be interesting with somebody who just looks for an overhand right. Again, she is kind of very, I would say, like one-dimensional in her striking and her ground. On the ground, her last fight, she had great top control. Like, was able to hold, sustain, get her breath, keep minimal movement. But when she was on the bottom, her guard was terrible. So it might just be a case of, somebody who trains to be the winner, be the better person in their training scenarios, because on offense she's great, but when she's fighting defensively, it was interesting for sure. On this one, I would say I'm going to go with the one-hitter quitter power of Gomez Juarez, my last name as well. It's great seeing a lot of these Mexican fighters who, was for a while you saw all these Brazilian fighters. The fight before this is another Mexican fighter, Moreno, another Mexican fighter, which, was kind of a resurgence of when you saw like Cain Velasquez, Roger Huerta, and then it kind of died down. And so it's nice to see all these other fighters who are getting this opportunity. Gomez Juarez, I think her aggressive attack is going to help her keep pressure up and, blow through, hopefully, Demopolis. What are you thinking, Colby?
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing is kind of interesting when you think about it. There seems to be like these surges of good people that come out of these different parts of the world. So like you're talking about in Mexico, we've seen, a few years ago when Adesanya was on the rise, these fighters out of like New Zealand.
Yeah, Hooker. Yeah.
Yeah, and now on the main card, we got two fighters coming out of France, Gane and Ngannou. So it's kind of interesting that the ebb and flows of, I think you get a really good fighter in a particular gym. It probably attracts other good fighters, and they probably build on each other. So that's an interesting dynamic that you pointed out there. As far as who it leans towards, I feel like it's probably a coin flip for me. Just looking at the stats, it's hard to rely on these stats when they aren't in the UFC because I question how these stats are compiled. But Vanessa has significant strikes landed per minute of 3.13 and Silvana at 0.71. So I think it kind of goes to what you're talking about. Silvana's, seek and destroy, looking for that nuclear option of, that one punch that'll put him away. So I think it should be a good matchup. And next up, we've got Tony Gravely versus Simon Oliveira. Gravely coming in at a negative 240. Simon coming in at a plus 200. How'd you break down this fight?
Watched Gravely's last fight. It was a fight that he was winning, was ahead. He's got a 21-7 record, 5 losses by submission, 9 KO, TKO, and it showed in this fight like that he wins by KO and TKO. A lot of people might be familiar with him from Dana White's Contender Series. So his last fight was against Nathan Manis, and it was interesting because you see his strong punching ability that fight. He dropped Manis with seconds left in round 1. I think he landed with 2 seconds left in the round, and Manis stumbled back to his corner. With that being said, you saw that he relies on his power a lot because in round 2, he was finished. So he tried to go for overhand right, and he got caught and dropped. So with somebody who has that powerful build, it's great. They do great in round 1. I think round 2 he kind of had an energy dump because Manis came back and finished him. Oliveira, who is my pick for this fight, is 18-3. Fought in Dana White Contender Series, won by split decision. I thought that he won. To me, it looked like he won clearly. He's known as a submission fighter, but his wild style was super fun to watch. Threw a lot of kicks. You could see his Muay Thai background. Just comes in. I don't even know who to explain it by, but just very has a lot of flair and style. And was really good at mixing it up. He would, throw kicks, throw elbows, spin, throw punches, and then go for takedowns. So he was good at have that good balance that I think is needed. Especially at these lighter weights. You got to be more have more depth than just relying on your power. That's why I'm picking him, because I think his kicks are going to play a big factor in this. His wrestling. I just think he's got more tools than Gravely. Gravely definitely has a power advantage, just has that build. But last fight, he started strong. He rocked the guy. Then round 2, he relied on it too much and got taken down. Got beat. So Oliveira is my pick. Even though he's got a lot of submission wins, I think it'll be a finish. The kicks just to me will play a big factor. I hope to see more people relying on their kicks. Last main event, we saw Giga did great with his kicks, and then once the kicks go away, they kind of lose that. So he's got good takedowns and is able to mix it up even with great top control, that I think it won't affect it too much. So Oliveira for me. Who are you thinking?
Picking the upset. I like Oliveira also. The thing I think is interesting is before the Contender Series, his previous 4 fights were wins by submission in the first round, which to me says a lot about his ground game, about being able to, when a guy's at their strongest, to be able to dominate them and get them into submissions. And a minute in, I see a minute in his fight before Contender Series, he won by guillotine choke. Before that, it was arm triangle, a minute 22 win. Before that, from guillotine choke, another guillotine choke before that. But they're all in the first round. So the fact that he has, like you mentioned, he has some decent striking ability where he's going to be able to set up those takedowns. And that's one of the things people who are really strong on wrestling sometimes struggle with when they're coming into the UFC, is using their strikes to set up takedowns. So if he's already got a decent striking game, I feel like he'll be an advantage coming into this fight. Jack Della Madelina versus Pete Rodriguez. And Madelina is coming in at a big favorite, negative 340, versus Rodriguez at a plus 270. And I'll start with Madelina. Watch his last fight. Definitely was not a fast starter. Seemed to spend about a minute dancing around the ring, mostly kind of feeling out a guy, which is not uncommon, but just something to note. He did have some good scramble ability when it went to the ground. I saw some good boxing techniques and some good striking defense. He definitely had a tight boxing guard, which is always going to be helpful, especially for counters and things like that. He was able to fight through a head and arm triangle when he got taken to the ground, which was in pretty deep. It was pretty surprising that he was able to not just get out, but then he was able to stand up right afterwards. So I was pretty impressed with that. Pretty excited to watch this guy fight. Even though he doesn't start off fast, I liked what I saw in the striking and in the grappling defense. With Rodriguez, he's a late replacement. This guy's shots definitely look a little bit more like grappling striker. Has very wide hooks. He's definitely a powerful guy, but not nearly as refined striking, I don't think, as Madelina. And I got the impression this guy is learning on the job, at least when it comes to grappling. It was really interesting watching one of his previous fights where he was able in the first round, he took the guy down, got into the half guard immediately, and he spent like 10-15 seconds working very hard to get himself into full guard, where he almost got put into an armbar, and then spent like another 10-15 seconds getting out of full guard back into half guard where he was to begin with. And when he got into that half guard that time, then he rained down these really heavy strikes. So he had really good ground and pound when he attempted it, but it just seemed like he was kind of lost in what he should do and which position was actually better than which position. So I was very confused when I was watching his fight. That's why I kind of got the impression like this guy's kind of learning that it's not natural for him at this point. He hasn't done enough grappling for it to just be instinct, but was definitely a powerful guy. I think Madelina is going to need to try to avoid getting into a brawl with this guy and kind of use in and out movement, 1 to 3 strike combos, and I think that's the strategy that he's going to need to, or not necessarily need, but it's a strategy that if he employs, I think he'll end up winning. He can also use his really good striking guard to be able to take one and give counters back. Because like I said, with Rodriguez, he has these very powerful kind of wide hooks that he likes to throw, and I feel like that's a very good style if you have a strong defense to be able to block one and then throw 1-2 right down the middle. So I'm going with Madelina on this one, which is in line with the odds makers agree. So no big surprise there.
Yeah, Madelina is definitely more experienced by far. He has 2 losses, but since those 2 losses, he has 10 wins. So he's won by decision, by KO, TKO. This is an interesting fight because I don't see it. This to me, like, if it has a potential for like knockout of the night or like crazy back and forth, is going to be this one. Pete Rodriguez have fought for Icon Fighting, who is owned by Roy Jones Jr.'s manager. So it's like an up and coming promotion, but all his wins are like 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes. And like you said, like it looks like he's learning on the job, and he hasn't had much time to learn, which I think is going to factor in against somebody who has 10 wins in a row. You know, he has that puncher's chance again, very powerful build, but I think him just not having the experience is going to show. Like, you know, he does have a puncher's chance. He has just beat people in a minute or 2 minutes. Like 2 minutes 11 seconds is like the longest fight. 2:21. But wins in 10 seconds, 41 seconds, a minute 25, and 2:21 his most recent one. Whereas Madelina has all kinds of wins. You know, I just expect he's going to be cool, calm, composed. And Pete Rodriguez does have that puncher's chance, but I think Madelina, yeah, he's favorite for a reason. I think clear favorite in this one, but I think this is one of those where it's like they're gonna fight. So,
well, you called it last week in the performance bonus call out with the Collier and Sherman fight. Although I don't think anyone predicted it was going to be by submission. You called it was going to be performance bonus nonetheless, and you're right. So, okay, another performance bonus
pick right here.
Call out right here. Okay, sounds good. Next up, we have Michael Morales versus Trevin Giles. Morales coming in as a negative 125 favorite versus Giles at plus 105. And I think this is going to be a fun fight. I'll go ahead and start with the breakdown on Morales. He's coming off of Dana White Contender Series win by decision. It was a very fun fight to watch for sure. But the thing that stood out to me more than anything else is that this guy could not block a punch to save his life. He cannot dodge a punch, and he could not block a punch. He had his hands up the whole time. It was really weird. I would think just by chance, like one of these punches would, you know, get blocked or hit a hand, but every punch seemed to land on this guy's face. So anytime he was on defense, it was absolutely horrible. But the great thing about this guy is he's pretty aggressive, and so whenever he went on offense, he let fly, and he has some pretty interesting or pretty good striking technique, and it was definitely an entertaining fight to watch for sure. So I'm looking forward to this one. My hope is that Morales has been in the gym and working with the striking coach on, you know, how to avoid getting hit, which you know, Giles definitely does not have that same issue. Giles is able to block some punches, although he doesn't tend to block as much. He's much more about avoidance of punches, so he's able to slip punches. But that actually was his downfall in his last fight. Giles, even though he's able to evade lots of the strikes, the part where he got caught, it was kind of like with when Stipe fought Francis, and Stipe hit Francis, had him hurt a little bit, and then kind of went in for the kill, and that's when he got caught. It was the same thing with Giles in his last fight, where he went in, he hurt the guy, had him up against the cage, and he kind of went in, but then he started to jump back, realizing the guy was not as hurt as he thought he was. He took one step back, took 2 steps back, and that is how lots of guys end up getting caught, is just running straight back to when you're trying to avoid strikes. Listen to Teddy Atlas on this. He has a philosophy on, you know, strike evasion, and his rule of thumb is always 1 step back, 1 step to the side, either side, and you want some lateral movement to get away from a guy. You don't want to run straight back while he's running straight forward, because the guy running straight forward is you know, going to have a big advantage. But Giles, he's definitely a good striker, and in his fights before that, he's definitely been in some wars. Can definitely take a punch, can definitely give a punch, but he's got decent defense, like I said, good evasion. And Giles has definitely got some striking power for sure. I remember the fight with him and Lawrence Krauss a while back. It was really incredible to watch, even though Lawrence Krauss shouldn't have been in that fight because of the weight difference. It was still a really fun fight to watch. Giles, if Giles can initiate strikes, I think he's going to land and do big damage, and you know, Giles can dodge and block, so he has a huge advantage over Morales. But I think this is going to be a fun fight. I'm expecting it's not going to go the distance, and I'm going to go with Giles to win.
Yeah, it's interesting watching these guys come up to other fight organizations. Morales has fought in a couple of Mexico cards, which kind of goes off of that what I was saying earlier. You're seeing these Mexican fighters come through, and I think they need to find a couple better training partners at times because it definitely seems like he's the one in his gym who is good at whatever. Because you mentioned he doesn't have the best defense. He wins by KO, TKO consistently, and I think his opponent this fight is just more versed, has the composure. Like, I think you have to lose, to get experience sometimes. I think for the most time, and Morales having 12-0 and winning a certain way. I think Giles, however you say his name. Just you can see it. You mentioned his last fight. He was winning. He was had a strategy. It's just he made a mistake, and it was a very clear mistake that his opponent capitalized on. But I think he's been in there. Fought UFC before, fought for decisions. I think he'll be able to kind of wait him out and then do his work in round 2 or 3 for sure. So I agree with your pick.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you're saying about being potentially the best guy in the gym. Because I remember my first day training in an MMA gym where I worked with a striking coach, and I was coming in with a wrestling background, so I had very poor striking skills. But the very first lesson that I got was put my hands up, and the striking coach just starts throwing punches at my head. And this is like, teach you, move your head, keep your guard up. I wasn't supposed to throw any strikes back, but the very first lesson is, how to avoid damage when striking. And I feel like that's a really big hole in Morales' game at this point. Hopefully he'll work with some coaches on that and improve that, because if he does, I think he has some really good potential. He's a really young guy, so he's got lots of time to learn. But you definitely don't want to learn the hard way by getting KO'd in a UFC fight. So we'll see how this one goes. Rioni Barcelos versus Victor Henry. Barcelos coming in as a huge favorite, -490, versus Henry coming in at a +370. And I think this could be the upset fight of the night in terms of the biggest underdog having a potential to come in with a victory. So let me explain what I saw when I watched some of these fights. So Barcelos, his style, he's very flat-footed. He kind of has a little bit of a Muay Thai stance, not exactly traditional Muay Thai, but kind of reminded me of that. He's a very slow starter, and there's something really strange about his style. He's not the only guy that has this style, but he's what I'd say a forward pressure counter striker, where he gets very much up in your face, kind of like almost right in the pocket, but doesn't throw any punches and waits for the other guy to throw strikes. And it seems like he really is just waiting to counter. I hardly saw him, at least in the first round, initiate any strikes at all in his last fight. He did have some calf kicks, some body kicks, but when you watch all of his kicks were counter kicks, where he got kicked and he kicked the guy back. And he was throwing some 1-2 kind of hook combos. Barcelos definitely has got a very strong build, a very muscular guy. So it was pretty interesting to watch. He has a really good record at 16-2, so he has a lot of wins. I'm not by any means saying that the guy's a terrible fighter, but I think maybe one of those reasons for the wins is the kind of unusual style that maybe a lot of guys aren't prepared for. And let's see, so he also had, so here's the other thing that stood out was in the second round, was able to knock down his opponent with 1 minute left, but wasn't able to finish him, which I thought was really interesting. So he did end up losing his last fight to decision, but if you look at what happened in the second round, you think there's no way this guy's going to lose. But for whatever reason, as soon as he knocked the guy down, he jumped to the ground with the guy instead of inviting the guy back up where he was obviously doing very well. So I would question his strategy. I'm sure his coach was probably really pissed at him when he did this, because there was a minute left in the fight after he knocked the guy down and then couldn't finish him, and it was a pretty brutal knockdown. So it was interesting to watch. With Henry is a fast starter, and something I think is going to work particularly to his advantage with this style matchup is that Henry was able to, when I watched some of his fights, was able to strike, slip, and then strike, which I think is going to work really good against a counter puncher, where it seemed like Henry's style is to, I'm not sure if he does this on purpose or if it's just how he naturally fights, but I think he's going to be able to coax out some punches from the counter puncher, where he'll throw a jab, he'll step back to slip the punch, but then he'll come right back in. You see Masvidal's really good at this, where Masvidal will throw one or two jabs really quick, he'll step out and then step back in immediately. I think that style of fighting, if he can execute it well against Barcelos, will work to his favor. I also watched this fight against Kyler Phillips, where this dude just got beat up. It was bad. He got choked for 2 minutes and kept giving a thumbs up to the ref. It was like he was having a good time just getting his ass choked out. But he didn't let up at all. He didn't seem to be fazed by it. So I think he's got some mental strength. And he ultimately ended up coming back and winning by decision. So I think Henry's he seems like a tough guy. He's a very aggressive guy who starts off very quick. And I think the style matchup is going to work in Henry's favor. So I think if Henry can execute that strike, slip, strike, or use feints, I think he's going to potentially come out on top. So I'm making a huge upset call here for Henry.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on the upset. Henry, I've become familiar. I watched a lot of Japanese MMA, Ryzen FC. That's where I saw Henry fight a couple times. Any of you guys that get a chance, follow Ryzen. They're up, they're on super late because it's a Japanese fight. But, he's fought everywhere. He's fought everywhere but America at this point. And with Ronnie Barcelos, you can definitely see his style is very aggressive, very in your face. I think Henry has the style to wait him out, move, and has essentially seen this kind of fighter before. Fighting everywhere all over the world, you get used to a great diverse sense of fighter, and Ronnie is, I think, a powerful guy. But definitely, I when watching Henry's fights, I'm like he's smooth. He's a smooth guy to watch for sure.
Next up, we've got Ilia Topuria versus Charles Jourdain, and Topuria is coming in as a big favorite at -575 against Jourdain, who's coming in at +425. How'd you break down this fight, Fern?
Topuria is a favorite for a reason. Any of you guys who watched his last fight, he fought Ryan Hall, who is highly touted, highly regarded in submission world. It's hard not to watch the last fight and kind of be frustrated in a sense at how the commentators were heavily favoring Ryan Hall, despite it not being that way. If you go back and watch it, Topuria had an amazing game plan. He's undefeated coming into this fight. Fighting Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall has had won 8 consistently in a row, known for submission stuff, known for doing fancy stuff to engage people to come in and chase him and baiting people, essentially. Topuria fought that amazingly well. Aggressive attack. Even when Ryan Hall was on the ground, most people would be back up and be stand up, whatever. Topuria kept kicking him, kept making a move, which was weird because then Ryan Hall just would do funny stuff to kind of laugh it off and play it off. But it showed that Topuria was just I'm gonna get my points in, I'm gonna get my strikes in no matter what. So he was not hesitant on a couple of takedowns that Ryan Hall had, letting him come in, then rolling with him, throwing him off, and then following up with an attack. His avoidance of takedowns, I don't recall Ryan Hall taking him down in that fight. It was just great to watch him just shake him off and keep going, and it was off of a transition where he ended up catching Ryan Hall and just following up, and he just threw so many strikes out of nowhere that, even while Ryan Hall is getting punched in the face, the commentators are still look at him defending, look at him moving, like he just, and I was like, what are you talking about? And it's just like, then he's just like I don't know if you played any of the old UFC video games, but there'd be like people knocked out, just like looking dead body, and that's how he left Ryan Hall. So,
yeah, I remember watching that fight. It was very interesting to watch.
With Jourdain, watched his last fight, lost by Darce choke. I thought he was winning up until that point. His left straight, got a solid left straight. Even though he got rocked a couple times, that kept him in the fight. So he got clipped and then just threw left straight, and was able to back Erosa up. And Erosa rocked him, but that left straight let him back Erosa out of it and recover. Also, like right after that, he got rocked by Erosa. Erosa starts coming at him with some combos. Left straight helped him get him off of there. And in round 2, that left straight again helped him set up a big left hook. Went left straight, Erosa was expecting loud left straight. This time Erosa comes in, swinging overhand right. He goes big left hook, comes around this time, drops him. And in the tussling, the back and forth of it, he ended up getting caught by a Darce. I just think Topuria just is more versed. Jourdain has good striking, like I mentioned, good recovery, good sense of seeing where he's at and not getting overwhelmed. But Topuria's last fight was just so fun to watch. It was just, he definitely nullified Ryan Hall, and like I mentioned, it's definitely one of those fights where the commentators had a favorite in it, but it was good to see them be so wrong.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Topuria fight in this one. You got the undefeated wrestler going against the striker. Classic matchup. I think it'll be good. Next up on the main card, first fight of the main card, we have Rodolfo Vieira versus Wellington Turman. And we've got Vieira coming in as a favorite at -220 versus Turman at +180. How'd you break down this fight, Fern?
Even though Vieira is a favorite, I see this one being a close one. I believe this is possibly the first fight on the main card. So Turman, 3-3 in his last 6 fights, going back to 2019, where he fought 3 times in 1 year. That's, pretty impressive work rate. But he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, including 2 KO losses. His last fight was a split decision victory over Sam Alvey, Smiling Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey has so many fights in the UFC. He's got 22 fights in the UFC. So a victory over him, was kind of shows his level of skill at this point. Turman, to me, was easily winning the first 2 rounds. Like, he goes in right away, loves the clinch and grapple, uses it to try to take the back. Consistent pace, not fast, but just, working the whole time. Even mixed it up in round 1 with a spinning back kick. What people are going to remember about his last fight the most was eye pokes. It was, a couple minutes into round 1, eye poke. Round 2, eye pokes resulted in a cut over Sam Alvey's eye. Round 3, it resulted in him losing 2 points in 1 round. Literally got warned, lost a point for eye poke. Coming back from the eye poke restart, pokes again, loses another point, and
I watched this fight, yes.
And you're just like, man, I think if he can change his style, the way he strikes, that's going to be great. He's obviously more comfortable trying to clinch and take down. But his striking, I think that's, you mentioned earlier, a psychological thing, one of the guys losing in such a quick time. To me, this is going to be on his mind. How do I hold my hands? How do I keep him back without poking? And it definitely is going to be something to look for. I think, a ref having seen him poke somebody so many times last fight might be, have more of a propensity to just dock him a point right away. Vieira, watching his last fight, won by submission, has great wrestling, great takedowns, 7 wins by submission. he used his takedowns to set up his submission. He did, though, like in round 2, in going for a takedown, he got rocked, and then his default response is to go for a takedown, and he ate a knee after his opponent kind of saw that coming. Great recovery in round 3. Even though he got rocked in round 2, that wrestling base just kept that cardio up. He was able to get 2 takedowns. Was able to clinch a rear naked choke after his opponent Stoltzfus got up from the second one. So just you can see he's not just going for a takedown. He's looking for a submission, where to transition from there. And in looking at their clinch games, it looks like Turman likes to clinch and try to wrestle. Vieira, to me, just has a stronger wrestling and submission game, and I'm picking Vieira for this one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be watching this fight now. I'm going to be watching Turman and just trying to determine if he's consciously thinking about where his hands are as he's fighting. I wonder if he's going to come out and look like awkward at any time. It would really suck if he's doing something weird with his hands and ends up getting knocked out because for some reason he just can't think of anything other than, those eye pokes against Alvey. It was horrible. Watching some of the reactions, I think Dana White reacted to it also in the post-fight interviews, and he was just like, what the hell is going on here with this guy? This will be fun to watch. I think the odds makers got it right, though. Vieira coming in as a favorite. He's my pick as well. Next up on the main card, we have Cody Stamann versus Said Nurmagomedov. Stamann is coming in as a plus 160 underdog, and Nurmagomedov is coming in as a favorite at negative 190. This is going to be a fun fight for sure. I'm really excited about this one. So in Cody's last 2 fights are losses. His last loss was to Devolashvili, if I said that correctly. Some of these names are so hard to pronounce. Who's a great grappler. Cody is also known for pretty great wrestling. Couldn't quite get it done in his last match, but he's gone against, at this point, really good competition. Some things I notice about Cody's style is he's definitely got some great escapes from the ground. When he would get taken down, he's the kind of guy who doesn't accept it. He will immediately start working to get back up, and almost always does. He's got great sprawls, great scramble abilities. It's really fun to watch him get into some of these chain wrestling matches where there's lots of scrambles going on. He's a very durable, tough guy. He, in his last fight, took a lot of strikes in round 1, and he's kept pressure on. Some of the physical attributes. This is a guy who has no neck, so don't try to guillotine this guy, which his opponent tried to do in the last fight. Did not work out well. His straps just go up to his ears. I definitely don't recommend trying to get a guillotine on this guy. He when it comes to striking, he definitely leaves his lead hand at his waist, which we've seen in the past. There are lots of guys that do this. The most famous one probably being Anderson Silva, one of the greatest of all time to do it, and he'd lots of times leave his hands down, sometimes just to clown guys, but every once in a while you end up getting caught because you're leaving your hands down, and there's the classic match with Silva where he ended up getting caught leaving his hands down. So I'd like to see him, when it comes to striking, just keep a little bit tighter defense on the striking, and I feel like it'd open up a lot more opportunities for his wrestling. When it comes to Nurmagomedov, this guy is really fun to watch because he's got, you would think, because being from Dagestan, that his wrestling is going to be his primary attribute, but this guy is got some really impressive striking. He's got some brutal combos in his last fight, following a counter left hook when his opponent came in hard with a 1-2. He's definitely got that killer instinct. After he dropped his opponent, there's no hesitation. Once he had him hurt, he just follows up and goes for the kill. I watched his fight against Barcelos, who's also on this card, where he threw some spinning elbows. He has some really interesting kicks. He in that fight, he threw some weird question mark kicks where the angle of his kick when it is coming into strike is almost kind of at a downward angle. It is a very pronounced question mark kick that he's got. He's got good lateral movement. He's got good grappling defense. I didn't see very much grappling offense with this guy, which, like I said, is interesting given where he's from, which is really known for wrestling and grappling. And he had no checks at all for any of the calf kicks. So when it comes to this fight, if I were Cody, I would definitely be focusing on those calf kicks because it seemed like it was not something that Nurmagomedov was worried about at all in his last fight. And I could tell there were definitely a few of those kicks that got through that really bothered him. But overall, I do think that if Nurmagomedov keeps it standing, that he's going to win. He's got excellent striking. I think if Stamann can take Nurmagomedov down and keep him down, that's his path to victory. And in terms of my prediction, I'm definitely going with Nurmagomedov on this one. I think the odds makers got it right.
Yeah, you made an interesting point too, that he is one of those Dagestani fighters, that you expect to wrestle, you expect to be, submission based. But it's almost like in training with everyone and being of that background, he's like, well, let me learn how to punch and kick, because definitely exciting to watch with the strikes. Unique. You mentioned his question mark kick, and it's almost like it's something he got worked on, training with wrestlers, is, them taking him down, going for the calf kick or the leg kick, so him aiming just a little bit higher and coming around that. I definitely think he's going to be, the favorite to win. Stamann is, one thing I noticed is both these guys are kind of tall for the weight class. They're 5'7", 5'8", and, that's, you see fighters fighting at 155 at that height. They're, like Michael Chandler, I don't know how tall they say Conor McGregor is, but he's definitely like 5'8", 5'9". So these guys, like you mentioned Stamann, like you can see it in his build. Like he is a big guy, like just muscular guy, probably cutting quite a bit of weight. So yeah, this is going to be a good fight to watch, I think. Yeah, for sure.
Next up, we've got Michel Pereira versus Andre Fialho. Pereira coming in as a pretty big favorite at -280. Fialho coming in at a +230. This is going to be a fun fight. I've really enjoyed. I recalled seeing Pereira's last several fights because I've watched them as they happen. I couldn't really remember Fialho off the top of my head when I saw the name, so I went back and watched his last few fights. And he had a really interesting last fight where he won by KO in October of last year. His opponent had him in a single leg with his back up against the fence, and he knocks this guy out with an elbow, which we've seen before, where a guy comes in and they have bad technique. They hang out in the, with their arms wrapped around their legs and their head really low. And we've seen guys drop elbows down. But in this case, his opponent had actually pretty good position on him. His opponent's head was under his chin, and he knocked the guy out with an elbow coming straight across his face. So to be able to generate that much power from that position was just really impressive. This guy definitely is carrying some power. I can't wait to see how that's going to play out, because Pereira also has some really good striking power. So Fialho's last 3 fights are first-round KOs also. So that just kind of adds to, it definitely was not a fluke. This guy has the knockout power for sure. When he, one thing I noticed is when he avoids strikes, he does do that thing that, where Giles ended up getting caught, which is he backs straight up to avoid punches sometimes, and it may be a problem against Pereira because Pereira covers a lot of ground really fast, and Pereira also likes to throw 3-4 strike combos, which is where that defensive striking technique is going to be really working against you when you're going against a guy who can, likes to throw 3-4 punch combos. Those first 1 or 2 punches when you're running backwards might miss, but when the other guy's running forward and you're running backwards, you're going to be at a big disadvantage. So it was definitely something I noticed about his striking defense. If he lands, he's definitely got the knockout power, but hopefully he'll be working on his striking movement, defense movement a little bit before his next matchup against Pereira, who is a guy who has great movement when it comes to striking. This guy is all over the cage. He's always like jumping off the cage. He does backflips, all kinds of weird, flashy strikes that he tries to go for. Most of them don't land, but he's very athletic. He definitely expends a lot of energy moving because he's doing these, try to Superman jump kick off of the cage, this ninja stuff. It takes a lot of energy. And we have seen him kind of gas out in some of his other fights before. So that could work against him. So I think in his last fight, actually, when his opponent was on the ground, this is, you may remember, he did a backflip to try to land on the guy and try to stomp him, like a backflip stomp to the guy.
Yeah, turned his back to him.
Yeah, really, really weird. But, fun fighter to watch for sure. So I think Fialho's best chance is to drag this into later rounds. And hopefully Pereira's, dancing and flipping around the octagon and tiring himself out with all those flashy moves. I definitely would recommend, he try to get some grappling in to tire out Pereira a little bit and take away some of that speed. But also, Fialho hasn't really, I feel like, proven his conditioning. His last, 3 fights being first-round KOs. I don't know if he has the conditioning to be able to do that as a strategy. And Pereira, has shown getting tired, but I'm not sure that Fialho has any better conditioning. So I'm not exactly sure how that's going to play out in terms of his strategy. I think Pereira, his best strategy is to stay on the outside, create the angles, and use his diverse striking with extended combos, especially if Fialho is going to be backing up. My prediction is Pereira wins by strikes in the first round. I think if he's going to finish him, that's where it's going to get done. And I think the odds makers have it right here.
Yeah, one thing I saw is Pereira was supposed to fight a couple weeks ago, I think like 2 weeks ago, and Fialho is a replacement fighter. This is going to be his first fight in the UFC. He got signed, I don't know if just specifically to be the replacement fighter or whatever, but he's fought in the PFL, Bellator, UAE Warriors. I think, Pereira just has great striking diversity. Like, he's fun to watch. Yeah, he gets tired, but, he does some crazy stuff all the time. Fialho, I think it's too short notice, especially coming off the holidays. I think Pereira has been training this for a while. Yeah, it gets postponed a couple weeks, but because Pereira was supposed to face Muslim Salikov a couple weeks ago, and he was forced out for some reason. So Pereira, exciting guy. I hope to see him again. I think he showed his striking diversity, even though he lost a couple fights ago to Diego Sanchez, of all people, before he was disqualified in that fight for an illegal knee. But he was whooping him then, and I hope to see him continue his winning style and his winning streak, to see him face some, higher level opposition. It's unfortunate that I like waiting for him to fight, but it just kind of seems kind of wasted on a new last-minute replacement. Somebody who's not even proven in UFC, and then to give them 2 weeks to prepare for him. I think Pereira is going to win by some great striking.
Next up, we have Brandon Moreno versus Davison Figueiredo. Moreno's coming in at a negative 175 favorite. Figueiredo coming in at a plus 150. This is going to be interesting. This is the trilogy fight for these guys. So Figueiredo had a draw with Moreno 2 fights ago. Moreno won last time against Figueiredo to win the championship. And now we're going in for the third fight. And if you recall from the last fight, Moreno ended up winning by submission in the third round. And, the first fight that these guys had was great. It was a war. It was like one of those fight of the year candidates, which everybody loved to see. It was surprising that Moreno ended up winning the way that he did, or at least I thought so the second time that they fought. It seemed like either Moreno, he took it to that next level, or Figueiredo just came into that fight with something missing, not quite 100%. Because if I recall correctly, I think he took that fight, the second fight with Moreno, on like 3 weeks' notice, if I recall correctly. So he may have just been depleted physically and may have gassed out a little bit. Not sure exactly, but both of these fighters, excellent fighters. Moreno's got a 19-5-2 record, with his last loss being in May 2018 by decision. He hasn't lost in his last 7 fights. He has 2 draws, 2 TKOs, 2 decisions, and his last win by decision. and he's the favorite to win. Figueredo was on a 5-fight win streak when he fought Moreno. Is trained with Henry Cejudo and John Jones for this fight, which has brought up some interesting controversy. I don't even understand all the controversy, because I think some of the controversy comes from Henry Cejudo also trained with Moreno, and so Figueredo was calling Moreno a traitor, or saying that, calling him bad names, like he was somehow being sneaky by trying to draw secrets out of Henry Cejudo, since Henry had trained with Figueredo before. I'm not quite sure. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Brandon Moreno and Figueredo, the first fight was great. I think it was a lot of back and forth. Figueredo had, the momentum as well. And Moreno just, had that comeback story of, having been from the Ultimate Fighter. I believe he was cut and coming back and working his way all the way up to get a championship, title shot. And Figueredo, I thought he won that fight, their first one, but the second one definitely left. It was clear Moreno had figured him out, had a different plan of attack, wasn't planning on taking them to, to the final 5 rounds. He didn't want a repeat of, people might think I won, might lost, whatever, or that we tied. It's no, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat him. And it was just, I don't know if you could explain how great he analyzed him, but he just had an answer for everything that Figueredo did. And Figueredo, is clearly trying to find a solution to this. Doesn't like the outcome of the first fight, I'm sure. Second outcome, even less. Training with some, Henry Cejudo is has Olympic level wrestling. John Jones has, probably it will be considered by many to be the greatest, UFC fighter of all time. Just going to that next level to be I need to train with better, fighters, bigger fighters, fighters with that top level strength. And training with 2 champions, I think is what he needed to do, because that last fight, whatever he did in preparation for that, it wasn't enough to even be to repeat the same outcome of the first fight. He just somehow did worse. And
yeah, well, if you recall, actually, from the first fight, even though it was ruled a draw, if you remember, there was a point deduction. Mm-hmm. I think that ended up resulting in that draw. Mm-hmm. So without that foul point deduction, the judges did say he won, except the referee took a point away. So this is almost a classic trilogy fight, 1-1, except for the draw because of the point deduction.
No, for sure. And Moreno, has, hopefully he's able to maintain the level of fame he's gotten. He has been all over the place since he won since that close result the first time. And since he won, he's, more famous and more, well-known, recognized, and it'll be interesting to see how he's managed that as well. He's definitely one of the most famous, Mexican fighters at the moment in any sport, boxing, MMA. Getting shout outs from top fighters from all organizations. And, he's definitely earned it. I would like to see him keep going, keep winning, and, keep inspiring, hopefully, a next generation of Mexican fighters, because it's been a while since we had a Roger Huerta or a Cain Velasquez. And it's just be great to see it continue. Yeah,
and Moreno's just seems like such a nice
guy. A normal guy.
Likable guy. Yeah, Figueredo's been going, the heel route, bad guy route, it almost seems like. So he's the guy you want to see lose because of some of the things that he's said. But yeah, it's so crazy to go from being cut in the UFC to, a few years later, work your way, back through the ranks and become UFC champion. Yeah, incredibly inspiring story for sure. So I think Moreno is going to come out on top again, even though I do expect Figueredo to bring a better game than he did in his last fight. I think the odds makers do have it right. I do think Moreno is going to pull it out again.
I got to go with the Mexican guy as well.
And we have the main card, the fight that everybody's excited about, Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane. And Ngannou, believe it or not, is coming in at a plus 130 underdog against Cyril Gane at a negative 155. And we'll just go over real quick. Ngannou's last fight was in March of last year with a KO win against Stipe Miocic in the second round. Before that, he's had 4 first-round KO wins against Rosenstruck, Dos Santos, Velasquez, and Blades. And Cyril Gane, his last fight was a TKO win in round 3 against Derek Lewis in August of 2021, and he is 7-0 in the UFC. So, Fern, how'd you break down this fight?
I always try to just focus on the fighting part, but it's definitely hard to ignore when Ngannou is, clearly has his mind on other things at the moment. I think, to me, that's going to play a big factor because Gane is just talking about fighting, training. Has his coach in his corner, management keeping him focused. Ngannou, clearly is unhappy with the UFC. Clearly, has made it apparent that, he's looking at other options. Just every day it seems like when they talk about Ngannou, it's not anything to do with the fight. I think the fact that they were training partners, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got, people are going to think that they know each other, have each other figured out. But, these are big guys. His last wins were, against top opponents. And but Gane is a huge guy. He's a big fighter. Will know his style, his weaknesses. I think just all this added drama, to me, just doesn't help sell the fight. I just want to see them fight. I don't care about the mean mugging, the talks. In the training he dropped me. Oh, actually in training I dropped him. Just wait till you see that video. And you're just just show me what you're gonna do and just talk about the fight. I think Gane's focus on this is to me. I'd love to see Ngannou come out and somehow, get what he wants or have negotiating power, and keep escalating, elevating his career. Gane just seems like he just wants to fight and focus on fighting, and I think that's going to be the big difference. I'd love to say Ngannou would be my pick, yes, stick it to the man, but Gane is just I'm going to fight you, and that's all I care about.
Yeah, so, myself personally, I like seeing some of the drama stuff. I do like some of it, I don't. So the part I do like seeing is that video clip of Ngannou kind of, giving the cold shoulder to Gane as he walks by, just like he's badass. He's like, I'm the champ, yeah. And just pays no attention to him whatsoever. And then the look on Gane's face as the cameraman pans to him, and he's just like, what the hell? Doesn't even say hi to his former training partner or whatever. That stuff to me is fun. The part I don't like, and I think will work against Francis, is Francis even thinking about the next fight, talking about fighting Tyson Fury, talking about boxing, and this being part of the contract negotiation. I really don't think it's good to be looking past your current opponent, especially when it's someone like Cyril Gane, where it's kind of already, you're acting as if it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to win, and you're planning out your future career. I think that can be detrimental to not be in the moment and focused on how you're going to take down a heavyweight. It's been hyped up by people like Joe Rogan a lot about how Cyril Gane moves, how the heavyweight division has never seen a guy move like this before, and to some degree I think it's true, and some of the hype is justified. I do think there's a lot of special things about Gane for sure. He's definitely going to be, I think, Francis's toughest opponent after Stipe. I think that Francis in his last fight showed, that he has evolved as a fighter, because for a long time he relied on his power. When he went against someone like Stipe, who was a tactician, had a little bit of speed, and could avoid getting hit, the first time that they matched up, that's how Stipe beat him. The second time that they matched up, Francis was able to, stuff a shot. He was able to take Stipe's back and throw some punches in. He was able to show some patience and not just rush in. So that to me was very interesting in Francis's evolution. So had I not seen that last fight with Stipe, I would say Cyril Gane definitely is going to win against Francis. But since Francis showed so much improvement in his last fight against Stipe, I really feel like it's kind of a 50-50. Francis could, demonstrate a little bit of patience, wait for that good opportunity, land that, launch the nuclear option, and just, put anyone's lights out, including Gane. But also Gane has got that speed. He's in and out. He's got that really great movement, and he could potentially pick Francis apart. So, in terms of favorites, I do think Gane, to me, I'm going to predict is going to win. And I mean, the odds reflect this. It's not like there's a huge disparity in the odds. It's just Francis is a slight underdog compared to Gane. But I do think Gane has a slight edge because of that movement. But again, if I hadn't seen that last fight with Stipe, I'd say the odds should be much more in favor of Gane than Francis, because Francis has shown in the past his weakness to fighters who come in with good strategy and have good movement. Mm-hmm. So this is the fight we've been wanting to see for a while. I can't wait for it. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and like you brought up a point, with Ngannou talking about fighting Tyson Fury. Like we saw the last time somebody was thinking about fighting a boxer instead of fighting who was in front of him. That was McGregor against Poirier, and he got stomped. And and coming back, yeah. You can't look ahead. You can't. Like, and then Gane's been his win against Black Beast. He's faced somebody who has that one hitter quitter that, like, no matter what, is always dangerous, and he definitely nullified it. Whereas I don't think Ngannou's faced somebody like Gane. I think in facing Lewis, Gane has faced somebody that has the power, that he has to be wary of at all times, and I think that would be a good thing in his favor. So there you have it. It's the end of our second official YouTube video, and hope you guys are excited as we are. And it's the first pay-per-view of the year with many more to come. Thank you for joining us.